Well, we have 20 million blacks on this continent.
Right, right, but it isn't a thing where the rest of the country should feel terribly guilty about anything because they have had a better life here and their fathers and mothers than they would have had anyplace else.
Hollywood's golden age is often remembered for its glamour, famous stars, and classic movies.
Just as sure as I'm a foot high, you done got yourself a moonin'.
Well, you're gonna like her fine, Grandpa. She just takes getting used to.
But behind the shine was a darker truth. The film industry didn't just reflect racial prejudice, it fueled it, turning harmful stereotypes into entertainment and profit. Many beloved icons played a part, whether by choice or ignorance. For every legendary performance, there's also a painful story. Here are 10 extremely racist old Hollywood stars. Let's dive straight into it, starting with the cowboy who openly declared his racism. 10. John Wayne. John Wayne is an enduring figure in American cinema, the quintessential cowboy who embodied a rugged, straight-shooting brand of patriotism and masculinity. However, his on-screen persona stood in stark contrast to his off-screen ideology, which was laid bare in a now infamous 1971 Playboy interview. In this candid exchange, Wayne's views about blacks were not a product of a distant, more ignorant past. They were a deliberate and unapologetic statement made well into the civil rights era. The interview contains some of the most explicit and shocking comments ever made by a Hollywood legend. He declared, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. I don't believe in giving authority and positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people." His bigotry was not limited to black Americans. When asked about Native Americans, he expressed no remorse for their subjugation, stating, "I don't feel we did wrong in taking this great country away from them. There were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves." He also directed a homophobic slur at the actors in the film Midnight Cowboy, calling that film, an Easy Rider, perverted. These quotes are not a matter of interpretation. They are his own unvarnished words. This public declaration of white supremacist, anti-indigenous, and anti-LGBTQ+ beliefs shattered the illusion of his heroic image, revealing a profound and deeply ingrained prejudice. The gap between John Wayne's heroic image on screen and his real-life racist views has sparked ongoing debates about his legacy. In 2016, the California State Assembly rejected a proposal for John Wayne Day, and campaigns have continued to push for his name, statue, and image to be removed from Orange County Airport. The fight over his name shows how society is still struggling with the fact that some beloved icons were openly bigoted. Next, we turn to Walter Brennan, the character actor who fiercely held on to his convictions, no matter how troubling they were. 9. Walter Brennan. Walter Brennan was one of Hollywood's most prolific and beloved character actors, known for his Academy Award-winning performances and his portrayal of lovable, cantankerous old men in films and television series like The Real McCoys. For many, his on-screen persona was a comforting, folksy presence. Yet behind the scenes, Brennan harbored and openly expressed a bigotry that stood in stark opposition to the characters he played. Brennan was a staunch supporter of segregationist George Wallace's 1968 presidential campaign. He also used documented racial slurs, including a reference to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as Martin Lucifer Coon. His racism was not part of a role. It was a personal ideology he held to, even as the country was in the midst of the civil rights movement. While some of his fellow stars, like John Wayne, became infamous for their bigotry, Brennan's actions were less publicly scrutinized at the time. However, there is evidence that his career was ultimately curtailed because his anti-Semitism became known to many of Hollywood's Jewish producers. This distinction is telling, suggesting that while the Hollywood system may have tolerated an actor's overt racism, it had its own internal lines, which were drawn based on who held positions of power. 8. D.W. Griffith. D.W. Griffith is often hailed as the father of American cinema, a technical pioneer whose innovations in filmmaking laid the groundwork for the modern industry. However, his most famous and influential work, the 1915 silent film The Birth of a Nation, is also the most potent example of cinema as an instrument of racial incitement and propaganda. The film, while a technical marvel for its time, tells a vile and distorted narrative of the post-Civil War Reconstruction era. It glorifies the Ku Klux Klan as heroic saviors, protecting the South from what it depicted as mindless, lustful savages, a portrayal of black characters performed entirely by white actors in blackface. The immediate impact of the film was catastrophic. Its release led to protests, riots, and bloodshed across the nation. Most horrifyingly, the film's success directly correlated with the revival of the Ku Klux Klan. Griffith's cinematic masterpiece was not just a racist film, it was a piece of propaganda that legitimized and fueled a domestic terrorist organization. Richard Corliss, a journalist for Time magazine, observed that the film's brilliant storytelling technique lent a false sense of truth and emotional resonance to its hateful depictions, teaching audiences what to think about blacks and what to do to them. In the face of widespread condemnation, Griffith responded by making the 1916 film Intolerance, a sprawling epic that he claimed was his defense against the intolerance of his critics. Yet this supposed embrace of diversity was itself a profound act of hypocrisy. For all of its grand, multi-era condemnation of prejudice, Intolerance featured no blacks in its massive cast, revealing a fundamental blindness to the very racial injustice he was being criticized for. The controversy, however, also had an unintended but revolutionary consequence. The outrage from the black community did not simply manifest as protest. It gave rise to a powerful counter-narrative. Black entrepreneurs like Oscar Micheaux saw an opportunity to tell their own stories and challenge white perceptions of black people on screen. This led to the creation of the race film industry, a response that proved that Griffith's attempts to entrench white supremacy through film had inadvertently spurred the very cinematic movement that would begin to dismantle it. We move to the King of Blackface, whose painted performances became a troubling symbol of Hollywood's racist past. 7. Al Jolson. Al Jolson was a groundbreaking entertainer, an icon of early 20th century show business, celebrated for his boundless energy and charisma. He was famously dubbed the King of Blackface, a title that today serves as a reminder of a painful legacy. His starring role in the 1927 film The Jazz Singer, the first feature-length talkie, cemented his place in film history and, with it, the practice of blackface on screen. The use of burnt cork makeup was a central theme of the film's narrative, a choice that modern viewers often find horrifying. Yet, Jolson's legacy is complicated by historical context. He insisted that blackface symbolized his identification with African American suffering and music. Some black contemporaries, including the newspaper The Amsterdam News, viewed him as an ally, with the paper even calling The Jazz Singer one of the greatest pictures ever produced, and stating that every colored performer is proud of him. Also, Jolson's kindness was noted by black musicians like Noble Sissle, who recalled a personal act of support after a restaurant refused to serve him and his partner, Eubie Blake. It is argued that Jolson, in his own way, helped bridge a cultural gap. The St. James Encyclopedia of Popular Culture notes that he paved the way for African-American performers like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Fats Waller, and Ethel Waters by introducing black musical innovations like jazz and blues to white audiences. However, this bridge was built on a foundation of mimicry and appropriation. While his intentions may have been complex, the undeniable impact was the popularization of a practice rooted in the dehumanization and caricature of black people. He was an entertainer who, through his performances, reinforced a system where a white man wearing a mask of blackness was more celebrated and acceptable than a black person performing as themselves. From blackface kings to beloved crooners, we now arrive at Bing Crosby, the smooth-voiced star whose charm on stage couldn't erase his use of burnt cork in performances. 6. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby's career, much like his signature croon, was a comforting and constant presence in American popular culture for decades. He was the epitome of wholesome charm and relaxed cool. Yet his career includes numerous instances of a practice that is anything but charming: blackface. Unlike other stars who may have had a single infamous role, Crosby's repeated use of blackface in popular films demonstrates how deeply systemic and unquestioned this racism was in the golden age of Hollywood. Crosby appeared in blackface in several films, including Mississippi, 1935, Dixie, 1943, and most famously, the 1942 holiday classic Holiday Inn. In Holiday Inn, he and Marjorie Reynolds perform a song about Abraham Lincoln while wearing burnt cork makeup and wigs. This was not a rare or shocking act. It was a recurring element in his highly successful career and was viewed as a perfectly acceptable component of wholesome family entertainment. The casual and recurring nature of his performances shows that it was not an isolated act of an individual, but a widespread, institutionalized practice that was accepted and even rewarded by the Hollywood machine. Crosby's career shows that the entertainment industry was not just tolerant of racism, it was built on it, packaging and selling dehumanizing caricatures to the mainstream audience. The fact that a beloved star could, without significant controversy at the time, repeatedly engage in a practice with such a painful history speaks volumes about the pervasive racial blindness of the era. 5. Mickey Rooney. The 1961 romantic comedy Breakfast at Tiffany's is an iconic film, celebrated for its style, its music, and Audrey Hepburn's legendary performance. Yet the film contains a character so jarringly offensive to modern sensibilities that it is often edited out of contemporary broadcasts. This is the character of Mr. Yunioshi, Holly Golightly's perpetually harassed Japanese neighbor, played by the prolific actor Mickey Rooney. Rooney's portrayal is a textbook example of yellowface, a practice where a white actor uses makeup and exaggerated mannerisms to create a racist caricature of an East Asian person. His performance is built on a collection of offensive stereotypes: buck teeth, taped-back eyes, and a thick, almost incomprehensible accent. It is a portrayal that critics, both at the time and in the decades since, have condemned as an offensive ethnic caricature, an overtly racist and Orientalist depiction. The use of such a crude caricature in a beloved film shows how deeply these dehumanizing stereotypes were ingrained in Hollywood's culture and the broader American psyche, particularly in the aftermath of rising anti-Japanese sentiment from the Second World War. In a 2008 interview, Rooney claimed he was heartbroken and shocked to learn that his role had been branded racist. He insisted that he and the director, Blake Edwards, had fun doing it, and that he had never received a single complaint in over 40 years. This response may be genuine, but it reveals a widespread historical blindness to the pain and offense caused by these portrayals. The film Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, featured a scene where the titular character is visibly upset by the character, providing a powerful, human counterpoint to the idea that the performance was a harmless comedy. While Edwards later expressed regret, stating he wished he had never made the choice, the performance remains, forcing viewers to confront the racist underbelly of a classic film. 4. Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple was America's sweetheart, the most beloved child star of the 1930s, whose films were a beacon of hope during the Great Depression. However, one of her most popular films, the 1935 hit The Littlest Rebel, presents a jarring and painfully racist narrative. The film is a clear promotion of the Lost Cause mythology, a revisionist historical view that romanticizes the Confederacy and its defenders. The Littlest Rebel is one of those films that shows just how deeply racism was tied into Hollywood's idea of family entertainment. In the movie, enslaved black people are portrayed as if they were happy, loyal, and childlike, completely devoted to their Confederate masters. It paints slavery not as the brutal, dehumanizing system it was, but as something almost innocent and harmless. This message alone is disturbing, but the most shocking moment comes when Shirley Temple herself appears in blackface. Seeing a child in blackface is jarring even now, and it reminds us that racist caricatures weren't just tolerated at the time, they were celebrated and sold to audiences as wholesome fun. What makes it even more unsettling is how Shirley Temple's real life contrasted with these roles. Off-screen, she had a genuine friendship and professional partnership with Bill Bojangles Robinson, one of the greatest black dancers of his time. The two shared the stage in memorable dance routines that audiences loved, and by many accounts, their bond was warm and respectful. But Hollywood and American society wasn't ready to accept that kind of relationship on screen. In fact, scenes of Temple and Robinson holding hands were cut from the theatrical releases shown in the American South. Think about that. Film distributors decided that a simple, innocent touch between a black man and a white girl was more dangerous to society than the racist propaganda being spread by the film itself. This painful irony shows how deeply racism shaped not only the stories Hollywood told, but also the way those stories were edited, marketed, and consumed. 3. Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire is widely regarded as one of the greatest dancers of all time, a figure of effortless grace and charm, whose legacy is a hallmark of cinematic artistry. However, his career contains a deeply uncomfortable blemish: the Bojangles of Harlem number from the 1936 film Swing Time. This performance is ostensibly a tribute to the legendary black tap dancer Bill Bojangles Robinson, but it is performed by Astaire in full blackface makeup. The number is a study in artistic tension. On one hand, it is considered one of Astaire's most artistically brilliant sequences, a choreographic marvel that features his pioneering use of trick photography. On the other, it is rooted in offensive caricature, from its sepia-toned makeup to its appalling lyrics that exploited the trope of black ignorance. The controversy over the number has led critics and scholars to debate whether it is a tribute or a travesty. The number serves as a profound example of what is sometimes referred to as positive racism, a type of bigotry in which an act, even with a seemingly benevolent intent, remains rooted in dehumanizing stereotypes. The very act of Astaire, a white man, wearing the mask of blackness while dancing to honor a black artist, reveals a stark racial power dynamic. While Astaire had the privilege to wash the makeup off after the scene was filmed, Bill Robinson and other black artists were confined by a segregated industry that often forced them into stereotypical and subservient roles. The number, therefore, is not just a dance. It is a complex and troubling artifact of an era where a white man could borrow a black identity for artistic expression, while black artists were denied a seat at the table. Now we move to Lillian Gish, the silent screen legend, whose choice of roles tied her legacy to one of the most openly racist films in cinema history. 2. Lillian Gish. Lillian Gish is often remembered as one of the greatest stars of silent cinema. With her delicate looks, emotional performances, and ability to captivate audiences without ever speaking a word, she became an icon of early Hollywood. She was also the favorite muse of director D.W. Griffith, the man credited with revolutionizing film. Together, they made several groundbreaking movies, but among them was one of the most harmful films ever produced, The Birth of a Nation. This 1915 film is often praised for changing the way movies were made, but at its heart, it is filled with racist propaganda. It glorifies the Ku Klux Klan and paints black people as dangerous, ignorant, and predatory. Lillian Gish didn't write the story, but her role in it gave the film a level of respectability and artistic power that made its message even more dangerous. She played a white woman whose innocence is threatened by a black man, portrayed by a white actor in blackface who chases her to her death. Her performance, filled with emotion and vulnerability, wasn't just acting. It gave credibility to a false and hateful idea that black men were a threat to white women and that the Klan were heroes protecting society. That image had devastating consequences. The film wasn't just entertainment. It shaped public opinion. It inspired racial hatred, gave new life to the Ku Klux Klan, and even influenced how black people were treated in everyday life. As journalist Jelani Cobb puts it, it is the most pure, honest, unfiltered distillation of white racist thought of that time. And Gish, by starring in it, became part of that legacy. What makes her story even more complicated is her continued loyalty to Griffith. Even after the film was widely condemned for its racism, she defended him and stood by his side. This raises an important question. Is it enough to say someone is not personally racist if their work contributes to spreading racist ideas? In Gish's case, she may not have written the script or believed in its message, but her decision to lend her face, her talent, and her star power to a project like The Birth of a Nation made her complicit. Her story is not about open hatred, but about silence and inaction. Lillian Gish will always be remembered as a pioneer of cinema, but her choice to take part in a film that glorified white supremacy is also part of her legacy. 1. Gary Cooper. Gary Cooper was once celebrated as America's great screen hero. With his tall frame, quiet eyes, and simple, honest acting style, he became the symbol of integrity in films like High Noon and Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. Audiences saw him as a man who stood for what was right, a figure of incorruptible strength. But behind that polished image, Cooper carried a deep hostility toward Jewish people, a prejudice he reportedly made no effort to hide in private. Looking closer at his career, it's clear that his filmography was also tied to racially problematic portrayals. Much of this came through his repeated collaborations with director Cecil B. DeMille, a man famous for his grand historical spectacles, but also notorious for leaning on racist stereotypes and Orientalist themes. Take The Plainsman, 1936, where Cooper played Wild Bill Hickok. The movie twisted frontier history into a tale that painted Native Americans as little more than bloodthirsty savages constantly attacking white settlers. In Unconquered in 1947, another DeMille Cooper project, the script was filled with cliches about Native Americans as massacre-happy villains. To make matters worse, most Native roles were played by white actors in makeup, stripping dignity from the people being represented. This pattern extended beyond Westerns. In The General Died at Dawn, 1936, Cooper starred as a mercenary in revolutionary China, a film steeped in the kind of stereotypes that often accompanied Hollywood's portrayals of the East. Later, in The Story of Dr. Wassel, 1944, he played an American hero saving soldiers from the Japanese during the Second World War, a role that fed into propaganda, portraying enemies in simple, dehumanizing terms. Which of these celebrities surprised you the most? Let's know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time, thanks for watching.